All right. Hey guys, I'm jumping on here without Dan. If you were watching us on Dan's stream, uh, we did a little collaborative crossover here today. So we actually started out on Dan's live stream and then switching over. I think he's making a venue change. So wait for him to pop in over here. I'm still sort of getting familiar with LinkedIn Live myself. So uh, just excuse my fun little ghetto banner up here. Hopefully it'll get changed in time. Uh, so yeah, Jonathan, I hope it started. I hope you can hear me. I'm not really seeing any comments come through right now, so I'm not sure if we're actually broadcasting or not. But hey, there we go, Russell. All right, so looks like we're live here. So I'm just waiting for Dan to pop in. But already some pretty interesting conversation, especially I think sort of in the DCT space, some kind of interesting talk here. Guys, I've had a few people already mention the theme music or coming out with some music. I'll see what I can dig up, maybe some old recordings that I've made. I probably got something on an old hard drive somewhere. So we're still waiting for Dan. Dan was hanging out outside in Arizona. So so I think me and Dan are on the same side. So you're probably not going to see a fight to the death, unfortunately. All right. Dan should be on here shortly. Caitlin, please go back to work. All right, here's Dan. I'm gonna get him up here.
Sorry, Brad. It took me a while because I've never been a guest on StreamYard before. It's now I know the process.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit different, huh? It's
Yeah.
Well, where do we pick off? I mean, actually, first of all, let's do this. This is my first, sort of a note to file live, if you will. So I thought super appropriate to have Dan Sfera on. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but I mean, you were a really big inspiration, for me to even break off and start doing my own thing, and then beyond that, trying to cobble together some content, create some engaging stuff for the community. So I always want to sort of pay my respect. So thank you. It means a lot for you to come on my show.
Thank you, man. No, I'm a fan of yours, and I think we need more content creators that are no nonsense. I think, yeah, let's just leave it at that. But I'm happy, man. I'm really happy that that's how it started. So keep it going, man. Especially those LinkedIn posts and more of these live streams would be great.
Yeah, that's the idea. And I think we're seeing even more like people spin off and start to have a bigger voice. I mean, we know there are things like SCRS out there, which, I've my own feelings about, but I feel like there's not enough sort of independent voices, especially at the site level, which is, we've talked about before, is such a sort of, I think, overlooked stakeholder in this whole process, right? I mean, we certainly don't get enough.
I think this maybe is a perfect segue from our last convo, but there's a lot of advantages to being small. And I think organizations now that have matured, I think they lose a lot of value as they get bigger. And I mean, who's to blame? The founders, they're making money, they're keeping the business afloat, but you lose some of that transparency. So when you see somebody like Brad just turn on their camera and no one's telling them what to do, you know that what you're getting is there's no other agenda. Unless you have some agenda, which is you're a site owner, so that's your agenda there is to grow your site. But I think people can understand that and get behind that. Some of these larger groups, people don't really understand what their agenda is. Well, who are you serving?
Yeah, no, and then to your point, and you've probably seen this too, but I mean, I've had a lot of people message me in the background, with things saying that they can't go say out loud, for fear of, pissing somebody off or,
Yeah.
rubbing a sponsor the wrong way. And, to that point, I don't know if you have had this experience, but I've gotten my fair share of angry emails from sponsors when I've, called
Really?
something out on LinkedIn.
Man.
Yeah.
Honestly, I never have, man. I'm surprised. I was waiting for it to happen. The guy, check this, man. And by the way, I gotta put this guy. This guy is like Gary V. Not this book. This book's like his worst book, but this guy can do no wrong to me. He's the reason why I started the YouTube channel in 2010. And I remember in 2008, I hired this consultant, right? So before YouTube, nobody knew who I was. I had no idea even what YouTube was. I hired this guy because he was like gonna prepare me for audits, and then I was like, all right, that's cool. But what I really want you to do, like, I'm happy to pay you for that, but can you also, and I'll pay you for your time, get me studies? And he was like, no, no, I can't do that, this and that. So that planted a seed for my site services. But he told me, because I worked with him for 2 years. I told him, hey, I read this guy's book. I think I found a way to grow my business. I just got to do YouTube videos about my experiences. You know what he said? I'm paying this guy. I can't remember how much. Back in '08 money, it was a lot. Don't do that. Pfizer is going to sue you. And if it's not Pfizer, it'll be someone like them. And it has yet to happen. Not even one angry email.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
don't
no,
do what the experts tell you.
nobody's threatened to sue me, but I think there's been honestly, it's been mostly in good faith, like the communication I've gotten whenever I say, because look, again, you've seen like these are things that most of these things affect everyone, right? So calling out like a CRO that doesn't pay me my startup cost until 9 months later, like I'm not the only one dealing with that. All kinds of sites are dealing with that. So yeah, it's been very, very interesting. But I want to talk about you and Yuma Clinical Trials. Is that what you're
Yuma Clinical
branded
Trials,
as?
and I forgot, man, I forgot your shoe, but thank you so much for your Air Force Ones, the Hightower Clinical Blue and Blacks. Oh my gosh, man, I wear those things a lot, actually. So thank you so much for
Nice.
that. Yeah, Yuma Clinical Trials. Been doing it for just over a year now. I moved here to Yuma in July of 21, so
So I
13
mean,
months now.
you obviously came in with knowing what you're doing to a large extent. Was I guess what's your experience been like in sort of like rebuilding or building again? And do you think I mean, has it been easier, harder? Have things changed since you've had that level of sort of hands on? Or I mean, how's it been over the last year?
Not much has changed.
Yeah,
I think it's key to have the right PI. That will never change. I don't see how DCT is going to change that either. It's key to have the right PI. These tools, like I use eSource now. So I started this site from eSource from the beginning. So my employees have no idea what paper source even is. Like they just know eSource. Like that's normal for them.
nice.
Um, as far as getting studies, a lot easier. A lot probably has to do with my network, and a lot has to do with the fact that it's an underserved market, which I'm sure you get a lot of too.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean that's certainly a big focus right now. I'm playing around here since it's my first live stream. Really, Joe likes your backlighting, so you
Thanks,
have
man. I'm
you have
even
such a
missing
nice
one.
setup.
I'm missing a light too. Like it's not perfect, but we just improve little by little.
Yeah, I haven't figured out my lighting situation yet, but
It's really tough, man. It's tough to do everything right and to be consistent. Like it's just tough. My audio usually sucks. I bought these. There's always a problem. I got an African gray bird in the house right now, so it's never perfect, man, but it's the content that people want.
yeah. Well, and again, I almost appreciate things that are less produced. You don't want it to be overly produced. Like again, it's like real. Just be
Yeah.
real. It's okay.
People look, oh, the reason I brought this guy up, Gary V, is not because yeah, he's the reason why I started vlogging, but he said something interesting that's like a carryover from our last conversation. The minute, okay, the minute you accept money from somebody for your brand, you lose a little bit of credibility.
Sure.
And I think that's perfect summary of like the organizations in our space that are built on just brands. Even this one, Latinos in Clinical Research, we haven't accepted money from, we're looking for sponsors. But guess what? The minute we accept, like, we just have to go out of our way to prove that we're still here serving the community. There's a way to do it, but there's also a point in time where you've got to remain transparent and authentic.
Yeah, I think it's a tough balance, especially to your point. I mean, if you start taking on sponsors, I mean, do you feel like that's going to limit what you're able to say? I mean, or does that stick in the back of your mind to say, well, okay, well now someone's sponsoring this, I can't go off and say, such and such without potential ramifications. I mean, does that put you in a bad spot?
I've had a sponsor and I'm in talks right now. I think we're going to do something soon. I'll have an announcement, but yeah, it has to be the right one and they have to know who you are and why your brand is what it is. And they're not going to come in here for a couple bucks and change that. So they know it's got to be on my terms.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, I feel like this is a space that hasn't had a lot of that transparency, and it feels new. I guess maybe I'm overstating that, but I mean, I think we're seeing that through interest in what you do and even what I do. That there's so much feedback and engagement. I mean, I know Russell was on the last here. I mean, this is why I'm a loudmouth. It's because I want things to get better. I want the process to improve. For everybody. It's not because I'm to hate the world. Is because what we do when you look at it is oftentimes like laughably inefficient and crazy. I know you've had to have seen that too. Some of that stuff. I just don't know how it's managed to maintain itself that way for so long.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we're on the cusp right now. Like I'm really getting into like the hard science. Look, all the stuff I should have been studying in college, I'm going back like to relearn because we're on the cusp of like this decade. I mean, let's talk like anti-aging, all right? mRNA, like there's a lot of opinions on mRNA. Whether it was rolled out properly or not is not for this podcast, but it's coming, right?
Sure.
It's not perfect. CRISPR, like microbiome, CNS stuff. There's so many things like that we're on the cusp of like improving our lives, and you still have this industry that's the bottleneck for it. Like, and a lot of that has to do with regulations, and it should be that way, but a lot of it should not be that way either. And I think sponsors need to realize that they're dealing with, or they should be dealing with, real clinicians in real communities and not with algorithms.
Well, yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think to go to your other point too, I mean, how much is the regulatory process like really putting a damper on things? I know we talked about DCT and how in a more broad sense, I think coming from these new vendors, but I mean, surely I don't want to speak for you, but I know that like I would love to be able to implement things, that would make my lives easier for the patients we serve, right? So even things like telehealth and e-consent and these sort of broader, little DCT methods. I mean, is that stuff being hung up, by unclear regulatory status or process? I mean, do you think that's an issue?
I actually don't think that's the issue. I think what's hanging up the industry is nothing to do with tech. I think those are tools. Like look, you've got to talk to the patient first, whether it's paper informed consent or e-consent. That patient has to agree to do the study. That requires man and woman hours, usually on the phone, usually face to face, usually like 9 no's for 1 yes. I don't see how that's going to happen at scale. I see that happening grassroots level in the communities. And no one's going to be able to convince me otherwise until I see it.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's fair. I mean, and I guess, well, I mean, have you had experiences with the trials you're doing having, DCT implementation or aspects at all? I mean, I feel like the concept is still really overblown. We're not really seeing a lot of new fancy stuff, at least not in the studies we're doing.
My fear My fear with that stuff, because yes, every trial we have now has elements of that. E-diaries is like the biggest one.
Right,
And
right.
you have different rules, like sponsor have different rules. One e-diary says when you register a patient, we don't want their email address. We want yours because, oh, we're not allowed to communicate with the patients. Whereas other ones say, yeah, put their email. Why are you not putting their email? Like, that's fraud if you put your own. How do we know
Right,
you're not answering their diaries? So a lot of that stuff needs to go. Like, it's just ridiculous that if you're going to download an app on a patient's phone that they can't get the email themselves, you have to give it to them. And then on other ones, like they get it, but the system doesn't work because it's clunky, because there's not a lot of like cohesion amongst the different platforms. That makes life unnecessarily burdensome for patients. I think at the end, we've got to be careful about balancing, like squeezing more data out of these patients with retaining them and giving them a good experience. Because, and we can't really do much about that either as study coordinators. Like, we literally sit there with the patient, download the apps on their phone, and walk them through it. But when they go home, we can't do that. We can't live with them.
right. Yeah, no, it's a and I guess you're lucky. I don't even think we have any studies where it's bring your own device. Instead, we're working with six different e-diary vendors across the different
Even
studies we
worse,
use.
man. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
No, no, yeah, we're handing out these shitty old Samsung phones from
Wow.
2013 or whatever, and they're garbage. And to your point, once they're gone with it, the training is so bad usually that I don't know what they're looking at. I can't even really help walk them through sometimes. And then you add in the fact that there's a lot of rural area here, in Oklahoma. Maybe people don't have Wi-Fi, so they've got to basically like drive into town to sync up their
Yeah.
e-diaries.
Like we use tech all the time, and like people on LinkedIn, they're way more familiar with these tools than a lot of patients. And I know just from like doing a live stream, like people ask me weird question all the time, like, do I like if I want to watch, do I have to have my camera on? Like, no, just click the link. So, and these are people like working with tools. So,
Right, right.
and this is LinkedIn, like we're all on there right now. People still don't really understand how these things work. They don't always work well. I couldn't get on this StreamYard. It took me 5 extra minutes. Technology doesn't work the way it should a lot of times, and that gets scaled, maybe 5x, 10x magnification when you're dealing with patients in a study, in pain, trying to do a diary, and then
Right.
they're over it and say, nah, it's too hard. I'm going to go take a shower instead. And who could blame them?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I got a question here from you from Joe's. We talked a little bit about some of these other social media tools. Snapchat's another one I've never ever even seen before. Do you have any luck with it?
Snapchat's gone, and no, I didn't have luck. I have to think about that actually, because Monica was my coordinator back then, and she might have gotten a few leads from Snapchat for patient leads. So we were running ads. Snapchat had a really cool thing where you can like geofence people based on where
Uh,
they were at the time. So I used to
nice.
run an ad at one of the conferences. I think it was SCRS. I ran an ad just around that resort, so I knew all the people there would see it on Snapchat to follow me. That's about as as fancy as I got with Snapchat.
Nice. I like it. I like it. Getting a lot of questions for you here. How do you feel about, pre-consent resources and things that help, better explain than handing somebody a, 40-page consent document?
Yeah, so this is an example of something that should be simple that becomes extremely frustrating. And you can't even blame the sponsor. So you have these templates, right? Like that are already IRB approved. Problem is they're housed on these IRB portals, and they're buried in like 200 other documents I could not care less about. I could care less that the sponsor submitted something for like 30 sites. Like, I don't care. I want
Right.
my flyer. I need to edit it to put my phone number on there and print it. That's what I need. And if that takes me like 30 minutes to just find the thing, and then it's a PDF,
Yeah, it's bad quality PDF.
yeah, what the hell am I supposed to do with that? So I just tell Katie, hey, figure this out. There's like a PDF to Word converter, but then she gets a patient coming in or PI comes talk to her. So that thing never gets done. So what ends up happening is we just make our own. It's not IRB approved, but they're generic. We just tell them, hey, like, this is what a study is. I could show you
Right.
one right now. Our social media guys working on for UMA clinical trials. They're on Instagram. Not IRB approved, but it's nothing study specific either. So, like, I don't think I could get in trouble. But if you ask the right consultant, they'll tell you will.
Yeah.
Here's one in Spanish. Like, it's about what clinical trials are with our number. Here's one in English, clinical research. It's just like educational stuff. These are way more practical than like the IRB approved thing where you're just not even going to find it.
Yeah, no, well, and I mean, you hit on a couple of things that, yeah, I've never talked about, but are super annoying to that end. You go to these IRB portals. First of all, they're terrible. I know we've kind of talked about how shitty the IRB portals are, but then some of them, like, you can't just download a document. You have to download a zip file, even if it's only one document, which is insane to me. But then, yeah, you get a PDF that's got, some like weird template stuff you can't easily change. It becomes basically useless to you, because it's so generic that, you can't even paste your own contact information in there. It's
when you have so much stuff on a platform, like on a portal, the more stuff you put in there, the less useful it becomes. Because, like, so you asked me at the beginning what I think about the industry. IRB portals have gotten way worse, exponentially worse. And I think it's related to mergers and acquisitions, more and more bureaucracy, more money, more monopoly, and we don't care. So here it is. This is what we have. We rubber stamp most protocols from sponsors, anyways. So they're going to use us. And sites, you just got to deal with it. And then, by the way, come to our conference too, and let's spam you. Let's spam you once you're registered, so that you make sure that you come to our conferences.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I mean that is pretty crazy now. That I mean, we've talked about sort of like why our IRBs like buying up all this shit, and what I mean, is there not at least a perceived conflict of interest if you are like also dipping your toe into patient recruitment and site management?
They
But then
own
you're also
sites.
an IRB. Do they straight up own sites?
From what I understand, there's at least one IRB that has site ownership. I don't, and
Interesting.
actually, I know for a fact, and I know which one it is. I'm not going to name it. One of my former students from the CRC Academy got hired, and that's where I was like, "What? You work for them?" Because I knew the IRB, so I'm like, "Oh, what do you do? Like, what do you review protocols, or what do you do?" He's like, "No, we're a site. Like we screen patients just like you."
Yeah, that's pretty insane. Again, how is
Rather
that? How
odd.
is that? How is
Rather
that
odd.
not? How is that not at least a potential conflicts? Right? I don't know.
Because they've gotten so big, man. Who's gonna tell them no? Like, you know how hard I've had some experience as a CRO doing IITs, investigator initiated
Sure.
trials, and the only reason we do them now, there's no money in there. The only reason we do it now is for our CRA Academy students. But
Mm.
we had to find an IRB for Dr. Hazen, right? Dr. Sabine Hazen. Do you know, to even get a call back, we had to like bug them like we're selling services. Then they finally get back to you. They quote you some ridiculous number. And there's not much choice. If you don't like them, there's like 3 others. Maybe 5 to 7. But then as soon as they get big enough, they'll get acquired.
Right. Right.
And meanwhile, people worried about Elon Musk buying Twitter.
So this is sort of something interesting, and Nelson brings up is putting ICFs on a website, or we've oftentimes emailed ICFs. I mean, they're IRB approved for patients to see. I don't know why you would necessarily get in trouble for it, but I don't think it's a good. I just don't think it's a good idea from a like patient engagement. Again, if you throw, I mean, we literally have some ICFs that are 48 pages. I mean, if
They
you
wouldn't
throw that
read
at
it.
somebody, they're going to be like, nah. That's
They
too
wouldn't read
much.
it. But they
No, I
think,
think you
first of all, they
you need
think
to
that
have that human element.
Yeah, they think that you're like, we have to tell every patient that comes in, like when they see the size of these things, I tell them this is not a contract. This is not like you buying a house. This is us disclosing everything we know to you. This is not a contract. This is for us to disclose information to you. You do not, like, if you sign this, I know it's intimidating, doesn't mean you're stuck in this study.
Right.
They all think that. So we wouldn't want that on our website because they think that we're like a bank or something at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tricky because you want patients to have as much information as possible, but I think it's almost like we help curate that information in a way to that it's a little more accessible. Obviously, they still take ICF home and read it if they want to, but again, to your point, you hand it to them and they're like, "What am I signing over here? This is extremely intimidating." To
Yeah.
just throw that at them.
Like when you go buy your iPhone, you're an Apple guy, right?
I'm
You
not an Apple
Oh,
guy.
you're
I'm
an Android.
no
Man, I got that wrong. Whatever. You go buy your Samsung. You go buy your Samsung, okay? Like,
Pixel.
do you want them to print out the terms of service like from that's already in your phone, the one that says you can get cancer and they're not responsible for anything? Like, do you want that on your like when you buy your phone? No, you just want to buy a phone.
Right.
Same thing with doing a study. Tell me what's important. I don't need to see all that right now. Tell me what's important, what I need to do. Let me know my rights. Tell me this is not something I have to do.
Can
I mean,
back
that's
out at any
basic
time.
ICF. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, again, I think it's becoming more and more. Well, okay, let's tie it back to DCT then. Is there a tech solution, do you think, that could help sort of synthesize that process down? Like maybe again, inserting
Yeah,
video into ICF and things
I
like
think
that.
so. I refinanced my house, one of my homes, in January. Thank God before the rates went up. Oh my God, what a good move. So first time ever, it's with Rocket Mortgage. First time ever, I did a virtual closing, and I was like, this is so convenient. The guy was right there, just like you are,
Right.
and then I had the document on the screen too, and he explained like, this is what you're signing. Don't worry about this. Most people don't read it, but here's what it is. And I was like, no, I don't care. Boom, click here, click here. So why couldn't that work in research? I think it could. Same thing as being in front of somebody with a paper. I mean, you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I haven't really seen this used. I don't know why we couldn't have a simple, I mean, ICF synopsis or the key facts there that helps. I mean, I know we still have to cover certain aspects of the ICF, regardless. But again, wouldn't it be easier to have that? It looks like people are already doing it in other industries.
Yeah. I mean, whatever makes it easier for the patient. I think, Nelson, one of Nelson's other comments is not wanting to see the ICF in advance is different from not being able to see it in advance. I agree with you, but you also don't want the patient to get the wrong impression before you get a chance to talk to them.
Yeah,
Like
and
that'll scare people off if you don't talk to them first.
yeah, that's true. And there've been times where we've offered it. I mean, we'll never deny somebody the opportunity to look at the ICF, but I think to your point, it will, and it has. We've seen it scare people off because again, things are sometimes worded in ways that aren't clear, even though these
Mhm.
are supposed to be, whatever, written at an eighth grade level or anyone should be able to understand. They still manage to screw it up on plenty of occasions.
Yeah. I've emailed it to patients like when I'm pre-screening them. I have like a 10-15 minute conversation if they're interested. I said, look, I'm going to email you the informed consent. You can see all the details about the study. And then I'm going to schedule you to come in on this date and you could bring it in with you and we'll sign it then.
Right, right. But usually, again, that conversation's a caveat of like, hey, don't get overwhelmed. We're going to go through it.
Yes.
And if you just
Yes.
had it out there without that, I think sort of, disclaimer, then that could cause problems. Why not just share the ICF flip book? I mean, I've only seen that implemented on maybe a couple of studies. I
I
don't
don't
think
even
that's
know
a
what that
common.
is.
Yeah, I think there have been some, attempts for sponsors to sort of again distill it down in different ways via like a flip book or
That'd be
a
cool.
summary. Yeah, it's not
Then you can
it's
email
not a
them
bad
that
idea.
instead.
What's
Yeah.
that?
I said then I could email them that instead. That would be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the sort of original question. I don't remember who asked it, but just having more. I think it was Jonathan here. Yeah, about having more pre-consent resources. Again, I don't think aside from things that are literally just like a flyer that says, "Hey, we're doing an atopic dermatitis trial. See if you
Hmm.
qualify." I mean, something truly informative about the specifics of the trial. I mean, we do not see nearly enough of that. If so, they may send you one or two little booklets, and then they're gone.
But you know what? Like, there's something further upstream to even get to the point of discussing a ICF with someone, whether it's a flip book or a 30 pages form. To even get to that point, you need a lead. Like, you need
Right.
somebody.
Right.
In my current experience, the only leads I've been getting are from the clinicians we work with. Say, hey, Dan, I just saw this patient. They're interested. Contact them. If if I just got them from Facebook, they'd be very skeptical.
Right.
But because I call them and say, "Hey, Dr. Smith just saw you told me," then they feel like I'm doing them a favor by calling them.
No, I mean, you've touched on something interesting. We're fairly aggressive with Facebook, and we've had some good luck with it. But to your point, I mean, it is way more of I don't want to say a sales job, but it's way more of a like trust building because it doesn't already exist, to your point. And again, if you call me, I mean, even I think from their perspective, like some fucking weird company I'm just calling that's on the internet. Like, I don't know who you are, where you are. I know nothing
Yeah.
about you, but you want me to come in and you want to draw my blood and give me, experimental medication. Like, I think that's a hard sell for somebody who doesn't have the physician relationship. So, I mean, you're 100% right. I don't think anything's going to change that. Uh, and to go beyond that, how are you guys working at all with like any of these like AI, companies that are digging into EMRs via
No way.
unstructured data queries?
No way.
No, no,
No.
not trusting that.
I've met some of these at conferences pre-COVID because I was intrigued. Like, oh, what's the virtual trial? Let me see what you guys have going on. Well, glad you asked. The founder came out. Hey, we're backed by one of the largest CROs. It's very small print. Also, like this CRO backs these guys. I'm like, all right, tell me about your studies. What do you have? Well, it's a retrospective chart review. So we go into your EMRs, we put our AI in there, and then we can just run studies. And then maybe one day we can give you a study too if you're appropriate. But what they're
Right.
really doing is extracting your data and doing studies in perpetuity based on your actual live patient private practice visits. What a great bargain for like 3 grand. They were offering doctors like 3 grand to put this program in their EMRs. And it's a
I'm
big
sure that
CRO
that
backing them.
sure that data is worth a ridiculous amount too.
Yes, that's a good question for Darshan too. Like, hey, this legal and this CRO allowed to do this?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question, and maybe curious to see how that plays out because there's a lot of these companies popping up now that are sort of, I think, positioning themselves as like patient recruitment tools, but are really backdooring into EMRs and then kicking out data. But what else are they going to do with that data, or you know where's
If
that going to
if
go?
if this inflationary environment that we're entering in has any positives, it's that these companies that are not profitable, meaning that it just doesn't work. Maybe it's too early, or maybe it's just not a good idea. We're going to see less of them.
Sure, no, that's
We're already
perfectly
starting to
fair.
see, like, back to the basics, man. Sponsor I'm working with just fired their central recruiter. Why? We haven't got one lead. One, not one. We had to do training for their portal. I check it. I log in and check. It's like, hey, free patient. Awesome. Not one, man. With some algorithm. They're using some fancy algorithms too.
Sure, still not cutting it. So I mean, this is interesting. I don't know. I'll be curious, Laura, if you have any other information about this study. I'd be curious to read up about it. At least an example where there are people finding out about trials on their own versus via an oncologist. And I mean, I have to imagine oncology that may be more common because people are. It's different than someone who has itchy skin, right? The what's the word I'm looking for here? Their incentive is way, way different than, a lot of the drugs that are being tested. So maybe that could be accounted for by the fact that, these are people who have,
It's life or death, man. Their sense
cancers.
of
Right, right.
urgency. It's sense of urgency. I know I would, God forbid, get diagnosed. I'd be looking right now and calling up all those AMCs I bash. I'd be calling them like, what do you have? Um, when it's something like arthritis, yeah, we got a cool treatment, but you can also just get an injection in your knee every 6 months.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, we see that in derm. Like there's Dupixent exists. A lot of people use it. It works pretty well for most things. So
Yeah.
it's more challenging because, people are fairly well controlled. It doesn't interrupt their life,
I think
totally different.
I think oncology should be treated like on its own. Like most of these things, Brad and I, sometimes we oversimplify,
Of
but
course.
oncology is separate, man. Almost can't like all this tools like AI, all that stuff like direct to patient. I think that actually can work with oncology, like
Sure.
because the patient are so into it. Like again, it's like life or death.
Yeah, it's a very different motivation to your point. I think that's important to note, for sure. There's
And you're
another
letting
interest.
phlebotomists come to your house. If you have
That's right.
cancer, you're letting people come to your house. You're doing, if they tell you, hey, you have to do 3 out of 7 e-diaries a week, you're doing them.
Right.
If you don't want that warning that, you're going to get dropped. Like, it's totally different. Oncology, I think these tools work there first. And then maybe if they're improved, work in the
Yeah. No,
rest.
that's a really, really good point, I think, and it's probably something that's goes underappreciated. And kind of going back, I mean, to the ICF conversation. I mean, do you see patients that don't want to participate because of paperwork or the complexity involved? I mean, I tell people this all the time, but like, usually people are more willing to do the things that they're asked than I think the perception is. Once they're in the trial, you've built the relationship a little bit with the patients. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't suffer a lot of dropouts, even if we are asking a lot from them. I don't know. What's your experience been?
Yeah. If your site is small and the coordinators are incentivized properly, that's not going to turn them off. You already know the objections
Right.
beforehand. They're like 80% are the same. You know the objections, you know how to answer, you know how to put the patient at ease. When you start getting bigger, like when IRBs start owning you, and like we said on my live stream, when you just paid to show up and that's it, a patient tells you, Brad, if I work at UCLA, all right, I'm getting 50K a year as a coordinator. My manager meets with me every quarter and says, hey, you know, we would like you kind of making mistakes here on screen failures. We'd like for you to improve. Your CRAs are saying you're not answering queries fast enough or entering data fast enough. Cool. You just told me my metrics. All right. Patient, I'm sitting in front of a patient. Hey, Dan, these 20 pages, man, I don't know. Oh, yeah, I know. That's how these studies are. I mean, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. You'll still get paid today. By the
Right.
way, I gotta go get lunch right now too. So let me know like what you're gonna do. Oh, I don't want to do it. All right, cool. Here's your $50. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
If they
Yeah.
do that at my site, you know what I'm saying? Why? Why? No, no. Let's make it work. Are you hungry right now? Okay. Yeah, you're supposed to be fasting, but we can reschedule your blood draw for tomorrow. I could give you a sandwich right now. That's the difference, man. Small is the new big.
No, again, I don't disagree, and I've seen that all throughout my career and experiences in different institutions. And I mean, no, I think that's incredibly, again, underappreciated and sort of not called out enough. I mean,
And
I
this
love that.
happens, man. This happens. Like your son Axel was just in a, or not Axel. Your son was just in a trial.
Right, right.
Um, and a variation of that happened to some degree, from what I
Yeah, no,
gathered.
no. I mean, yep, no. I think yeah, no, you're right. You're dead on there. I mean, again, it's well known at this fact.
Axel is James
Yeah,
Fowles'
yeah,
son. I
I know.
just interviewed him
I know
too.
you
I
just
got
talked to him.
confused.
It's all good. It's all good. So, I mean, look, why do you think there's such a disconnect between sponsors and sites? I mean, look, I think we're trying to bridge that gap by doing things like this and putting more content out. But look, I have a little bit of a conspiratorial, feel that I think that, frankly, if I'm a CRO, you don't really want super efficiency, right? You want more billable hours. The chaos kind of works for you, right? Um, but I mean, more generally speaking, I mean, why do you think there's such a gap between sponsors and sites?
Because the people designing, I'm learning more from my dad still. Like, I got into research because of him. I owe him a lot for getting my start. He's moved on from being private practice, like very practical, pragmatic, to no longer seeing patients. He's like almost retired. So he's doing a lot of academic work, like publishing papers. I think a lot of that's why I'm getting into the hard science too. Like I'm just kind of following in his footsteps again subconsciously, but it's totally different world, man. These guys writing these protocol, like these scientists and they're doctors too, they have no clue what the community-based clinicians have to deal with. Like they have no idea what kind of comorbidities they have. I think that's part of why this IE criteria is so crazy. It's like, well, you want somebody who's like unhealthy on the outside, like in the case of psoriasis. My PI told me this. He's a very practical guy. UMa's biggest private practice. Very practical, former army doctor. He says, Dan, they want severe on the outside, psoriasis, and perfectly healthy on the inside. It doesn't work that way. You're not going
Right.
to get those people. But these people in the ivory towers think it works that way. Like they think that patients live in a vacuum. They don't actually treat them. There's a disconnect between doctors who publish and doctors who treat. And there's only a few that know both worlds. I think the magic happens there. Like Dr. Hazen's one of them. Dr. McCullough's another. Like there's a few.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do. I think that's the biggest single problem is the one you point out, the difference between like what what they think the patient population looks like versus what it actually looks like. And I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of other parts of this industry that would go away if that
Yeah.
were fixed, right? We wouldn't need crazy recruitment companies. You wouldn't need, some of these other kind of far out solutions because it would be easier to go amongst regular people and offer them the opportunity to be in a trial.
And interestingly enough, the ones who bridge that gap really well, I know we bash academia a lot, are those academic medical centers because they write grants, they write protocols, but they also treat patients. So they know, but those are usually just IITs. By the time that proof of concept turns into like a industry sponsored study, they kind of
Right.
get more wishful thinking on their patient outcomes.
Sure. Sure. No, I think that's a good point. I'm getting close to time here. I do want to hear your opinion on this specifically because well, listen, I was supposed to have
Oh
a
man.
guest on from CVS to my podcast to talk about it, and I think I talked too much trash about it, and they ended up canceling and not wanting to reschedule. So I have really
We should have them
I don't
on.
I don't know where I stand on this. It's really interesting. So yeah, I want to hear the Dan Sferrer perspective here. This is really fascinating to me.
We just talked about what they do at like UCLA or someplace, and I don't know if that happens at UCLA, but the same thing's gonna happen here. So you're telling me all of a sudden, CVS, Walgreens, right? The pharmacies that you stand in line in to get your metformin refilled, where in line strategically placed, or at least right next to it at eye level, there's like Snicker bars and flaming hot Cheetos and Cokes. So there you can trust them now to explain study by the Walgreens, the same company that partnered with Theranos
Right.
on
Yeah,
trials.
I mean, people forgotten about that.
People, let's make them not forget. And Hulu did a good job on that show, The Dropout. Look, on paper, this could work. This is like a match made in heaven. Oh, we got database. Do you
Right.
trust? I go to Sam's Club to get my meds refilled. I don't talk to my pharmacist. I
Right.
just go there, give me my med, that's it, I'm out. Like, I don't have a relationship with my pharmacist. I have a relationship with my doctor.
Sure.
My relationship with Walgreens is I want to get a Diet Coke and some Flonase or some NyQuil when I have a cold.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I think in my mind, like, yeah, it's a data play for sure. Like, that's a no brainer. The data's there. I mean, I I don't want to go to into a CVS period for any reason if I don't have to. It's just the ones around here, at least they're kind of run down. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the guy working at the counter doesn't really give a shit. So I mean, how does that translate
Yeah, he's the
to,
same guy that's going to consent you too.
that could well be. I mean, it's unclear what their model is to me anyway. But I've always thought it was, again, probably smart in terms of just pure data that they have access to. But do they really think they're going to run it themselves? Like,
Very
do we
simple
know that?
studies, I think. Very simple studies, like what meds are you taking, and then fill out this survey on like your health economic outcomes, like that, maybe like that. Blood
Right, right.
draw, okay, maybe. Now, what happens when the sample didn't get processed fast enough and they got to come back? Or like in the example I had of the urine, like the patient had to come back for a urine sample, or they didn't do their diarrhea. They're not going to be able to do complex stuff at those kind of, and maybe I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, it's going to be better for all of us because that's definitely at scale. They can do a lot of stuff. I just don't see it happening on like very important things.
Yeah, no, and again, I would tend to agree. I think there are instances where it makes sense. To your point, again, sort of the low touch. But yeah, I think you're going to have the same problems you would have with any other DCT, and that there's, maybe trust is an issue, and
Or they can
I don't know.
misdiagnose people like with Theranos.
Right, right.
One
Yeah,
drop,
again,
one drop of blood, but we're really going to draw like 3 tubes. But it's just the drop for the investors.
and send it to a regular lab.
A drop for the investors, but 3 tubes for the patient.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. But again, we're seeing so much press from CVS and Walgreens. It's sort of annoying at this
They
point.
they
But
have to they have to do, and pharma wishes, because that's like B2B. Pharma understand, like, they're big corporation. They understand a big corporation. They don't understand you with your beard. Your beard's awesome, by the way, and they don't understand
thank you.
me with like a whiskey T-shirt and a Latinos and Clinker research hat. They don't know how to talk to us, man. But they know how
Yeah,
to
that's
talk to
fair.
their co-executives at Walgreens. Hey, Bob, yeah, man, we're gonna run this study. We're gonna run it through you guys. We're thinking 100 stores. Oh yeah, we can do that. No problem.
Yeah, I guess time will tell. I mean, so trial design is the source of a lot of the problems that we see downstream. So I mean, is it a matter of encouraging practicing doctors, or is it a matter of the drug companies not really actually wanting that to be the case? I mean, how do you
Both.
how do you feel about? Yeah, that's fair.
Both. I think that when you're busy running a private practice, you're in the trenches, and maybe you're like taking some courses to like keep up to date. I mean, matter of fact, that's why a lot of our PIs like research, not just necessarily for the money, but they want to feel like they at least have like a toe in what's next, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you have the same experience. Because I know a few doctors that are busy private practice. They're seeing like 30 patients a day, but they're also like, okay, this is like a interesting new development. Let's look into it. But they're not going to go like write a paper. Um, that takes a lot of time. They might do that when they're getting ready to retire, but they're not going to do that in their time off. They're going to spend time with their kids. They already don't see them enough. Um, watch a game. I mean, like,
Right.
they're people too.
True.
There's a time and place for that. I think research can bridge that gap though, because we've helped doctors turn into IITs. Like, there are some doctors that are like, hey, I'm like super, super passionate about this. I really think this will work. Like, you do trials. Like, how do we put this together? And that's how some of our IITs came to be.
Yeah, I'm curious. So, I mean, some of the practices we work with are interested in doing IITs. I mean, our business model, I don't think is too much different than yours, but it's really based off of sponsor revenue and then splitting some of that revenue. So doing an investigator initiated trial is potentially not a great financial,
No, you're
you
losing
know,
money.
right, right. I mean, you guys just
We don't
eat
pay
that,
for
or
it. Yeah. I tell them if you can get the funding for it, like you need a medical writer, you need an IRB, our favorite topic. You need an IRB.
right?
This is how I got in. I know their quotes, what they quote. It's ridiculous. You need an IRB. You need, if you're going to actually have data, you need like a database of some sort. So EDC is not cheap. And you need like a biostats to put like the clinical study report together. And oh, by the way, you need a site to enroll patients, but I'll do that for free because you're my PI.
Sure.
But you got to pay for everything else. Usually that just stops most of them. Now some of them have money, they have, so like they're willing to do that, and those are the ones we've been able to do.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, I've always considered whether that, if there's a business model there. Again, it's not really our, you know, it's not in our wheelhouse, but I feel like we've been approached about it. But it's always like, hey, unless the sponsor is ponying up, you know, a decent chunk, and you're getting that sponsorship from the sponsor, then probably not. It's probably
Well,
not going to work out.
a lot of times you can get like some of the sponsors you work with, like especially if they like the PI, to maybe co-sponsor it. Um, I've gotten close once. They turned me down. I thought they would for sure do it, but they turned down my dad and a partner of his. I was like, oh man, this is like a good, for whatever reason they turned it down, but it's possible. It's possible I get it funded.
Fair enough. All right, man. We're about wrapping up here. I mean, anything before we go? I think people probably know where to reach you by now, but feel free to plug away and give us some parting thoughts here.
Man, no, just reach Brad, comment on his stuff. It's awesome because I'll comment too, because like when I see it, sometimes I just feel compelled to comment. Like, oh, this is too good. I got to put something in. So just follow Brad, comment on his stuff, and let us know like real things on your mind, not like this industry noise buzzwords.
That's it right there. Yeah, more transparency, and just almost, I mean, brutal. I want brutal transparency out there. I mean, that's what we've lacked, you know. So I'm hoping that we continue to see more of that.
And we need big, like we need AMCs. There's a place for them. Like I said on my
For
live
sure.
stream, their KOLs and their PIs could bridge that gap between real world practice and research. There's a place for that. There's probably even a place for CVS and Walgreens to do it. But don't ever think that small sites seeing patients in the community, underserved communities especially, um, can ever be replaced by these things, because I just don't see that happening, and I don't think patients will either.
I don't think it's a perfect way to end. We're not going anywhere.
No, sorry.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Brad.
Later.